Today we are going to talk about identity security, and I have two guests with me. And I welcome everyone to this episode. My name is Heike, and then Jared, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Heike. My name's Jared Ross. I'm a product architect in Microsoft Security, covering all things identity security for both the IAM and SOC teams.
And then I have a returning guest. Martin, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Heike. Thank you for inviting me. Super excited to be here again. So my name is Martin. I'm a principal product manager lead. I lead a group of product managers in identity security.
And welcome. We announced a new identity security solution at RSA not too long ago, and I would love to talk about it. So, Jared, I start with you. Like, what was it that we did announce at RSA?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And RSA was super exciting for our teams because I think we really started to reimagine what identity security was in the market. Traditionally, a lot of organizations have been disparate across their identity and SOC teams. And we really wanted to change the way that we thought about that from the market perspective, but also make sure that when we're building out tools and processes, the organization came along for the ride with us. And so when we think about identity security, we think about them as three co-equal pillars. We've got the identity infrastructure. That's going to be all things related to the directory, how accounts are correlated together, etc. We've got the identity control plane. That's where we're going to make intelligent access decisions or make decisions about disrupting attacks as they're occurring or right after they've occurred. And then finally, we've got the threat detection and response capabilities. We have to think holistically about preventing, remediating, stopping, containing, quarantining attacks as they're occurring. And we need each one of these pillars to be working together as we think about them.
And so, if we actually look into those three pillars, so we basically, you mentioned it, we see the directory, which is the platform.
Yep.
And then I know I'm in the Defender world, but my favorite feature is actually conditional access still.
Yeah.
I think this is so powerful.
Yep.
All the things that you can configure, which is now the second pillar. And then, yes, of course, autonomous threat protection and response. And this is so crucial, especially for identities, because that's the key to everything, right?
It's the perimeter of attacks at this point. And I think that over the generations we've seen in both threats, but also in how we do prevention, we've seen that a lot of the attacks have moved from endpoints and network, which is how the SOC has been traditionally trained and how they respond to attacks, to identity being the prevalent attack pattern in terms of initial access patterns. For the most easy and simple ones as leak credentials, we see billions of leaked credentials processed on the dark web every single day. Microsoft processes those and applies those across our threat offerings so that both threat researchers can utilize that effectively, but also more importantly, our policies are in place for that. But when we look at what Microsoft's identity security offering is, it's made up on the left-hand side of all of the IAM capabilities, the identity and access management. That's going to be critical for how we think about getting users created in a good form, making sure they have strong MFA, and then making sure that as we transition into the access decision and into the zero trust engine, as you mentioned, conditional access is going to be really our prevention engine. That's going to be how we make sure that we're preventing the bulk majority of attacks with policies that the administrator can define for them, or Microsoft can help to do that through managed policies, etc. But the really important thing that differentiates Microsoft is how we bring all of this together into our ITDR or into our identity threat detection and response platform. Why that's so critical is making sure that when we are not able to prevent the attack, we're able to disrupt it. And we think that that's such a powerful offering as we think about our prevention and our disruption engines working together. And there's really good examples of that we'll probably talk about today. But one of those is going to be where attack disruption is able to look across the entire attack chain, make a decision about containing the identity, whether or not it's an Entra on-prem or even in third party, which we'll talk about. What's cool about that is that the engines are going to work together to make sure that the next attack that we see, we're going to get better in conditional access, for example, or disruption is going to take in more of the insights across the sign-ins, for example, in Entra, so that when we're making these access decisions or we're disrupting, we've learned enough about it the next time so that we're able to prevent it more effectively. That, I think, is why we're in such a unique place where when we bring together IAM, the control plane, and all of the response capabilities of Microsoft, we're really the most advanced when it comes to shifting left on preventing attacks, but also being able to effectively disrupt them as well.
So we are not going to announce a new product here, right? So we are talking about capabilities that our E5 customers have already. But of course, bringing the power of all of these together. I know Martin is showing a demo later where we show a few new insights that we have. But how can people think about this when they have E5 and we are asking them, please use it and turn on all the things that you have?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll let Martin add in as well. But one of the things that's really critical about our offering is we've added a bunch of new capabilities that Martin will demo today. Things like unified risk, where we're able to take in all of the threat signals and all of the insights and context about the identity. That's going to power both the conditional access engine and the disrupt engine, but it's also going to give unique insights for both the identity and SOC teams to be able to prioritize investigation, prioritize posture improvements, etc. One of the things that's really important about our offering, as you mentioned, is we're not introducing a new product per se. We're introducing capabilities across these three pillars that work better together, but also work natively out of the box. And so, as you mentioned, this is all part of E5. And so when I have E5, I drive a new security outcome. I'm able to drive the capabilities for both the identity and security teams to work better together and have an interconnected workflow so that when we're thinking about preventing attacks with policies and disrupting attacks and responding to them, how do we make sure that those are interwoven together versus traditionally, I need separate tools to do each of them. And I need to have the identity team that sends a ticket back to the SOC team and vice versa. And that ping ponging, if you will, spends time. And we need to be able to contain threats quicker. And so we really thought that making sure that these interconnected scenarios across the identity and security teams work really well together within the Microsoft Identity Security offering.
So, Jared, and then of course, our customers are so diverse, size and geography and the needs. So,
Yeah.
how are we making sure that we can help them all?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that that has been one of the best learnings as we've talked to customers and CISOs is they don't look like a normal, no organization is normal, if you will. Every organization is going to have legacy systems. They're going to have on-premises infrastructure. They're going to have cloud infrastructure, maybe third party, disconnected SaaS, PAM offerings, etc. Our identity security solution covers any identity, anywhere, and any type of identity. I think in the world that we live in today, humans and non-humans are the prevalent identities that we see. But as we move into the agentic world, and I think we've seen that stat of IDC 1.3 billion agents by 2028, we expect that that's going to explode from here. And our identity security offering is going to continue to extend as identities move, because we also know that the threats against identities are real and every type of identity has some threat surface to it. But I really want to, I think, jump into the demo that Martin has, because between the unified identity inventory and the risk score, it's really going to show our ability to look at all of these identities, reason over them, and then make them actionable. I think the actionability is going to be key, because giving IT administrators and SOC teams just lists of recommendations isn't useful anymore. So maybe Martin, you can show us a little bit about what this all looks like for the SOC and identity teams.
Sure, of course. Let me just summarize what you mentioned about any type of identity in every environment and customers' environments looking different from one another. I think it maybe in Hebrew it translates better, but I like to say that every environment is like a snowflake. They're all different in some kind. They all have like this homegrown applications or sometimes solutions that they built that help them provision accounts. And we want to be able to protect those as well. So here, let's take a look at the dashboard. You can see this super cool tiles at the top. You can see the different separation between the types of identities. If I start from the one on the left, I can see the identity providers. So I can see that I have human and non-human identities coming in from Entra. And as Jared mentioned before, if I have what we call third-party identity providers, for example, Okta or Ping Federate or whatnot, I would see those identities there as well. I can also see in the right, I have SaaS applications identities because of the different connectors that I have connected to. And scrolling a little bit to the right, I can see the on-premises identities coming in from the sensors that I have deployed on the domain controllers or other identity infrastructure servers. And I can see the different PAM and IGA solutions that are connected. I can see this green circle over here because I have connected PAM solutions, like for example, CyberArk, or IGA solutions like SailPoint. And again, I can see other types of classification between non-human and human identities. So scrolling down a little bit, I can see super important insights about my environment. In this example here, I do not have any users with the risky lateral movements, but I do see, for example, one user that is considered dormant in AD and should be remediated. This dashboard includes several posture recommendations, but the real strength is not just on only posture. What I want to show you today is actually talk about the unified identity inventory and the unified risks Jared mentioned earlier.
Before you go there, oh my goodness, this is so cool. So the top insights, so the user is considered like it's a sensitive group. So that means, are we giving customers, I mean, we don't need to go through all of this now, but we give them the opportunity to configure what a sensitive group. So has this been configured already somewhere else? Like where's this intelligence coming from?
We have a classification mechanism that we automatically understand which users or which groups would be sensitive. For example, if you are a member of the global admins or you're a member of the domain admins, that automatically classifies you as a sensitive user. We also have a concept in Defender called criticality that you can define your own rules. Let's say looking at the role, if you are C-level role, or if the account lives in a specific OU or whatever other types of rules that you can configure, you can classify those as critical identities. And we use that criticality in different places in the product. One of them we will see later in a couple of minutes in the unified identity risk. But not only there, we also use that to leverage the different kinds of detections that trigger our alerts. For example, an alert could be a medium type of alert, a medium severity, but if your account is sensitive, we could provide that information and make the alert a high critical alert.
Which then also feeds back to conditional access.
Yeah, just to add on, I think what's powerful about criticality and sensitivity is a lot of those things come out of the box as well. And from there, you can tune them to what your organization looks like. But criticality takes in things like the context about your identity, the privilegedness, where you are in the organization. All of that comes together, and why it's important, I think, it feeds into unified risk because we get to then make more intelligent decisions about when to prevent and when to disrupt as well.
Cool. So let's go back and talk a little bit about the unified identity inventory, and then talk about risk. So going into the assets, into the identities, what you see here is the inventory, the new unified identity inventory. I'm showing here the human identities inventory. We also have a non-human identities inventory that also includes agentic identities. You can see here is the whole list of users that I have in the organization, but let me try to explain this differently. We are not using the word user anymore, or trying not to use the word user. We are describing them as accounts versus identities. And trying to explain what that means is, for example, I, Martin, am an identity in the organization. I'm a person, but I could be using or having one or more than one account in the different providers. I could be having my on-prem account, my martin@microsoft.com account that I use for my daily tasks, like browsing the web, reading emails or whatnot. And I could have, for example, an Martin_admin account that I could be using for different privilege activities, like RDPing a domain controller, accessing a SQL server or whatnot. That's obviously for the on-prem in cases that I don't have a PAM solution. But something similar could be on Entra as well, or other identity providers. Other examples that we give, that we've seen in our customers is because of mergers and acquisitions. For example, my company, Contoso, bought a different company, let's call it Fabricam. And I have my Martin at Contoso and my Martin at Fabricam, two different accounts on two different domains, but they still belong to that same identity. And what we use here in the Unified Identity Inventory is correlate those accounts into a single identity, let's say, object. And that concept of identity follows the different experiences and the different capabilities within Defender. When we talk about, for example, detections, in the detections world, something suspicious could have happened on my account A, and something different suspicious could have happened on my account B. If those were two separate different accounts, the SOC would see them as two different alerts with no correlation whatsoever, no understanding that those might be related. But because of this super cool correlation mechanism, we now understand that those are belonging to the same person. And when we will see the timeline for that identity, we will see those two alerts and all the activities that led to that alerts.
I see this. Aaron is pretty tagged. It's sensitive tag. Okay.
Exactly. So Aaron is a great example for so many reasons. We see that he has different alerts, 8 alerts over 5 incidents. And we see that the risk score is, I would say medium, but pretty high. It has a risk score of 55. What that means is that we used all these different signals coming in from the different defenders and from Entra, of course, and other types of signals that I will share in a second. And we use that to compile and calculate a risk score. The risk score can be from 0 to 100. The higher, it's not the better in this case, the higher is worse. So let's take a quick look actually in the Observe in the Organization tab. What I can see here is I can see 9 different accounts that belong to the same Aaron identity. I can see accounts coming in from obviously Entra ID, but also Okta, Active Directory, AWS, CyberArk, you name it. We see these different accounts. In this, what we call account set, we see all these accounts correlated together by their strong identifier. What they mean is that they are actually the same objects originally, but probably synced through Entra Connect or the same connector in Okta to the different identity providers. What we see at the bottom, on the other hand, are 2 different accounts that in this case, the administrator or our correlation rules mechanism correlated them together. In this case, I imagine that Aaron Baxton admin was correlated because we understood that this account belongs to the same person, but they do not share the same strong identifier. Strong identifier could be the UPN in most cases or the object ID, depending on the source.
But I see, if there is no logic for us to correlate, I see there's link and unlink. So customers can then still link totally weird accounts to another account if there's no matching for us, or like if we can't make the math.
Definitely, yes. We have the option to manually link and unlink. And if you see this one at the bottom, this was manually linked.
Okay.
The correlation rules are super cool because the manual link is great, but it does not scale. Let's say that I have 1,000 of those users that have the Martin underscore scenario. I don't want to have to go one by one and correlate them manually. So going on to the risk score, we mentioned this earlier, that accounts can be marked as sensitive. So in this case, if I scroll down and I see the impact of compromise, the impact of compromise is very high because of 2 reasons. One of the accounts is a global reader through an Entra PIM role. It's eligible. There is no expiration. And the other one is because it is tagged as sensitive. It could have been tagged manually by a SOC admin or SOC analyst or an identity admin, or because it could have been a member of a group that was tagged as sensitive or automatically by the system. The impact of compromise is super important because maybe I could have 2 different identities, one that has 0 permissions, 0 special roles, but it has a score of, let's say, the same 55. And this account that has a risk score of 55, I would rather start investigating this account because of the impact of compromise, because of the blast radius that this account could have if it is really compromised.
And I have a couple of things that I'm noticing here on the screen. So first, Copilot. I know that Copilot now, also Copilot Chat is now available, but it also summarized the identity. So what happened there?
Yeah, what's really powerful about the way that we've thought about embedding AI into security and identity scenarios is we want it to be as contextual and actionable as possible. And so we've given you lots of new information about the risk score, things like the linked accounts, things like where the alerts are coming in, likelihood of compromise, impact of the compromise when it does occur. But we also know that the security and identity teams are overloaded already. And so being able to give a snapshot of what we've analyzed, but also what the role information is, the insights around sign-ins that are occurring, etc. We do that as part of just this sidecar that pops out automatically and does a quick analysis of it. Of course, you can go in and chat with it. Of course, you can build agents on top of it. But we also know that there are going to be some times when the SOC team needs a quick insight and then they jump in from there. And I think that that's really powerful. And I think, as we've probably talked about already, E5 comes with SCUs now as well. And so that gives us just another enabler to make our SOC teams even more powerful with the resources they have at their fingertips.
I know. And if I would have access now, I could ask Copilot Chat all the questions that I'm going to ask you now, Martin.
Yeah.
So there is one account, I guess, because it's twice the Entra ID. Is this no one is the
Let me help you out here. So as we saw before, this identity has 3 different account sets, but about 8 or 9 different accounts. But in this case, we see that 2 of the Entra ID accounts actually have a high Entra account risk level. And if I go here to the bottom, I can see actually that we have one alert in the credential access phase of the MITRE attack. And we can see the same over here. So this alert actually seems to be starting from an on-prem, because I understand that type of attack. And all these different signals, the alerts on the different accounts, wherever they came from, if they are on-prem, Entra, or third party, the different properties, the different permissions, the different criticality, everything together compiles into that risk score that we see, that 55. And even if it's just only one alert, the risk score can be very, very high because of those other properties that I just mentioned. And 2 other cool things worth mentioning is that we can see the risk trend over time. So actually, in this case, a couple of days ago, the risk was at 0 and it jumped into up to 55 because of that alert. But I can also see how this identity compares to other identities in the organization. For example, it's in the 55 and 90 percentile compared to other identities in the organization. So again, this is a very small environment, a lab environment, but in your environment, you would hopefully see a lot of other accounts and identities that have the different risk scores. Hopefully, all of them would be low to medium.
And what's powerful about this too, Martin, is the risk score that we calculate as part of identity security can be used in conditional access when we're evaluating risk at the time of sign-in, for example. But what's really powerful about that is we can actually use the linked accounts now. And so if Aaron, for example, has an admin account and a cloud account and an on-prem account, any one of those linked accounts can impact the risk. And so things like lateral movement or privilege escalation, we're just able to detect natively as part of the platform. And then this same score gets used in attack disruption and defender as well. And so we're really kind of bringing together the IAM infrastructure, the control plane, and the autonomous disruption and response capabilities, all part of this risk score. So this risk score seems like, oh, wow, it's just associated to this one account. But really, the power comes in with all of that context and correlation we've had, right?
So Martin and Jared, that's a lot. And so is this available for our customers already today, or do they need to do anything to get all the correlated insights?
Again, great question. So everything that we've shown here today is also available for the identity admin and the different experiences that the identity admin is used to use. And this is on by default. I mean, you just get it by deploying or having the E5 license. Today, this unified risk capability is in public preview. This is why you would have to go and opt in specifically to use it within the risk-based conditional access. But we should be reaching GA pretty soon. And when it is GA, it would be on by default.
So that was a lot. And thanks, both of you, Jared and Martin, for joining. And I will do the call to action today, which means go out, check out the public preview, opt in, and then, of course, provide feedback so we can continue to improve our products. And I hope you enjoyed the episode and see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.